So last week we looked at LKS1. We started looking at LKS1, and we have gone through several areas. And the last we completed with the topic on structure and content of the financial statements. And as I told you, when it comes to the P&L, P&L is being given different names. Namely, people might call it statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Then some might call it as profit or loss statement. Some might call income statement. But the standard name for financial statements, which is talking about the profitability of the company, is known as statement of comprehensive income. So the statement of comprehensive income is the term that is even tested in your examination. Question number 1 will specify that you need to prepare a statement of comprehensive income. Okay, so what does it mean? Statement of comprehensive income means it has two components. A statement where it talks about the profit and loss of the company. Then it also brings in certain other elements which are known as other comprehensive income. Now, this other comprehensive income is an income which is directly reported in the equity. So, as part of what is going into the equity is now considered in a statement called statement of comprehensive income. But when you talk about the profitability of a company, they look at the profit after tax. So that is what we talk about as the profitability of the company. Now, the elements which are brought in by way of the other comprehensive income are not part of the profitability of the company. Those are elements which are part of the equity, but routed through the income or the statement of comprehensive income. Okay, so our target element is the profit after tax. Profit after tax will be the profitability of the company, which is reflected in the statement of profit or loss, or you can call it as income statement, or you may call it as part of the statement of comprehensive income. So this is what I showed you last week in the PDF. You also might have seen it. Now, if you look at the PDF, so in the PDF, you can look at the Haley's financial statements or maybe the commercial bank. Now, in both cases, you will see there is a statement called statement of profit or loss. And then they bring in a statement called statement of comprehensive income. Right? So what is this difference is now they want to show their profitability separately. Now, this is that statement. Now, in this statement, when you go to the bottom, you see there is a line called profit or loss for the year. Now, this is the profit that we are talking about, which is after tax. So, as far as this company is concerned, they have earned actually, when it comes to the when you say consolidated, it is the group. So, when it comes to the group, they have earned a profit of 2.8 billion, because this is in thousands. So this is 2.8 billion. But look at the company. Look at the company. Now, as far as Haley's company alone, it seems they have made a 1.7 billion loss. 1.7 billion loss. So this is where things go wrong for a company. But being Haley's being a big company, they know how to turn around. But this may be due to some specific reason. Now, if you look at the financial statement, you see the finance cost for Haley's has been very huge compared to the revenue that they have earned. So they were not in a position to cover up the revenue because the finance cost was too high. As a result, they have ended up in a loss. But whereas their group is concerned, that is with the subsidiaries and associates, they have made a profit of 2.8 billion. Okay, Similarly, when you look at the commercial bank's financial statement, they call it as income statement. Now, their profitability is shown in the statement of income statement. So when you go down, as I told you, this is group, this is bank, and at the bottom you have profit for the year. So commercial bank's profit for the year is, that is for the year 2019, is about 17 billion. 17 billion. So the group also has made somewhat similar to that. But what I want to highlight is in the income statement only you get the profitability. Now see what happens. Now they bring in a combined statement called statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Now the starting point for this particular statement is profit for the year. So from where it is coming? That is coming from here. You see? So the income statement's last line or the end result is the starting point for the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Or you can call this as the statement of comprehensive income. And then you bring in all the items which are recognized in the equity. And then they say total comprehensive income for the year is 19 billion. You see? Now, this is not the profit that you have to remember. This they call it as the total comprehensive income because you had a profit of 17 billion and then you have brought in certain other elements which are known as other comprehensive income. We call it as OCI. When you take the short-term names, it is called OCI. So other comprehensive income is all the other elements of income which are supposed to report to the equity statement. So these are some of the items which you might have to know going forward. So I would prefer if you can read through these financial statements and try to recall these items by yourself, okay? Because this is what is going to appear in your examination also. So these terms you need to be very familiar, right? Now this is on the part of the P&L or the profitability statement, right? Now, how these items are presented in the financial statement, that is what called as disclose. Disclose means how it is presented. So LKS 1 specifies disclosure of certain items in certain ways. Some items must appear on the face of the statement of financial statement or financial position or statement of profit or loss. Other items can appear in the note to the financial statement. So now in the exam, you need to know that certain items will have to be there in your financial statement. Now, what does it mean? It is on the face of the statement of financial position or profit or loss means. Now, what you see here, this is the face. This is the face because this is called as income statement and this is the face. Now, in this phase, you need to show these items: gross income, interest expense, net interest income. Likewise, all the line items have to be there. Now, in exams also, these line items have to be there, but not in the same way. Depending on the items that appear in the question, you have to bring in all the items. Now, why this is so specific means this is for a bank. But when you go and look at the Haley's, look at what they have. Revenue, cost of sales, direct interest costs, likewise, they have a different template. Because the banks have to comply with the requirements of the accounting standards as well as the regulations published by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. So the Central Bank of Sri Lanka would like to see all these items. How much of interest income, how much of interest, because banks, their primary business is accepting deposits and lending money. So by lending money, you have interest income. By accepting deposits, you have interest expense. That is your main source of income and expense. But thereafter, you do miscellaneous business like doing certain financial services, you get commission income. Likewise, you have commission expense also when you get down certain services. And then you have other revenue sources like the trading income, other financial investments. So those are the things that we have to learn. Then you have all the expenses, personal expense, depreciation, all those items will come. And then you can bring in the tax, and then finally the profit for the year. Now in between there is one line item where it says less taxes on financial services. Now what is this? Now if you could recall in 2018, where the banks had, even 19 partly it was there, you have the VAT, value added tax on financial services, where the banks have to pay value added tax on the profitability. Then you also have NBT, which is called the nation building tax. That is also part of a tax, financial tax on financial service. Then on top of that, there was another tax which was brought in called debt repayment levy, DRL. We call it was DRL. So subsequently in last September, if I'm not mistaken, this DRL was abolished. So currently we don't have DRL, but and also NBT also, but value added tax is there, right? So VAT on financial services is still there. This income tax is what you have to pay as for the profitability, corporate tax. So that is something different. So you have to remember in your financial statement, there could be two types of taxes. One is the value added tax, the other could be the income tax. And where it should appear, by looking at this, you should know now, VAT should come before the income tax. That's why I told you these line items have to be gone through by you, and you have to start remembering it, either memorizing or whatever. You have to remember these line items, what comes first, thereafter what, all these you have to remember. Now this is specifically for a bank. Mostly up to now what I have seen is your examination question number 1 was focusing on a bank. So far they have not tested for a normal company. If it is tested for a normal company, then you have to follow this format. That is why I have given you two companies. One is to know how a bank will present their financial statement, and this is a normal company where how they, because what they have is no interest income, no interest expense. Their business is earning revenue by selling products, and then they have a cost of sales. So these we have already learned. When we did the sole proprietorship, we learned all this, but it is the same thing. Okay, it can be extended to a company also. You see, gross profit is there, distribution expenses there, administrative expenses. So these are the basic line items which can appear for a normal company. Okay, right. So what do you mean by appearing, disclosing it on the face of it is you show on the face of the financial statement. Other items can appear in a note to the financial statement. So even in your exam, certain items you will put it as a note or working, and then you have to refer that to your main financial statement. You can say this item, say for example, profit on disposal. So you can put a number, note number there, and you refer, or the working number, and you do the working thereafter. Okay. And all these financial statements are based on recommended formats of the bodies, accounting bodies. So you have the CA Sri Lanka defined formats, CBSL defined formats. Depending on those financial statement formats, you have to do it. Then the financial statement has to present the following details: name of the reporting entity. So you saw at the top, you had the commercial bank or the Haley's, whatever it is. Whether the accounts cover the single entity only or a group of entities. So I showed you, when you say company, it is the parent, and when you say group, it is together with the subsidiaries and associates. Then the date of the end of the reporting period. So you saw that is for the year ended 31st December, or it is 31st March, whatever. Then you have the presentation currency. Presentation currency is where it says rupees, thousands, or actually it refers to the rupees. The presentation currency refers to the rupees. And the next item you see the level of rounding. The level of rounding is in thousands or in millions. That is what it means. Then we come to the statement of financial position. So again, it is the same thing. And there are some disclosures. I'm not going in detail these things because this comes in as a separate note in the financial statement. But let's look at how this statement of financial position looks like. Now, this is the statement of financial position. And you see now where they start assets. And this is as at a particular date. 2019-18, then this is for the group and this is for the bank, and this is in rupees 1000. So you see all the elements that I told you is available here. They say commercial bank. Likewise, everybody will say. Now, even if you take Haley's, you see Haley's PLC annual report 2019-2020 statement of financial position as at 31st March, because they are a 31st March company. And when you say consolidated, it is the group. When you say company, it is the Haley's PLC. Okay, this is their group. Then the comparison is there. 31st March 2020, 2019, 2020, 2019. So likewise, you have these information in your financial statements. Then here comes the notes that I told you. You see. Now, if you want to see in detail what this item is, you have to go to note number 13 and see what is there. Okay. And they show the assets, current assets. This I will come now. This is what we are going to learn now. Equity and liabilities, and then you have the total equity. Okay. Now here there is one thing that is significant. Now you see in this particular company Haley's, what is at the top is assets. Then they have something called non-current assets. Okay. Then they have the current assets. But what you have at the starting point is property, plant and equipment. And then they call it right of use asset, investment properties. So many items are there. And you come here, total current assets. Then you have the equity. Then you have non-current liabilities, current liabilities. So there is a specific structure. Okay. Now let us go to the bank. Now here, if you look at it, starting with assets, you have cash and cash equivalent. Likewise, you go down and you see property, plant and equipment is here. Now, do you understand that these two formats, that is the Haley's one and the commercial banks one, has a specific format? Can anybody name what is that specific format is? You can send me a text. Okay, let me tell. Now, if you look at it, the company, what is the most liquid asset? That is cash. Anything that can be converted into cash is called a liquid asset. So if you look at this particular company, Haley's, their cash is appearing here. Okay, you see, cash is appearing here. So what is appearing at the top is property, plant and equipment. So for a company, property, plant and equipment is the least liquid asset because you can't immediately sell a property, plant and equipment and make money. But whatever that you have prior to that is something that can be easily converted to cash. Okay. So in this particular company, Haley's, the least liquid asset, that is the most illiquid asset, is at the top. The most liquid asset is at the bottom. But when you go to a bank, what is more important for a bank? Bank is built around cash. So cash is the most liquid asset for the bank. As a result, their most liquid item will come in the top. So we have a specific term for this. banks and other financial institutions prepare their financial statement in the order of decreasing liquidity. The liquidity goes down. You see, when you come down, the liquidity comes down. But when you go to a company like this, which is a normal company, their liquidity goes up when you come down. You end up with cash and assets classified as held for sale. So this is something very important. For banks and financial institutions, the assets even and the liabilities are reported in the order of decreasing liability or decreasing liquidity or reducing liquidity. But any other company other than a banks and finance company, it will be increasing liquidity. Okay, these two you have to remember. Right. So now you saw in the Haley's financial statement, there is current asset and non-current asset, and there is current liability and non-current liability. Now, what is this? An entity must present current and non-current assets as separate classifications on the face of the statement of financial position. So that you saw now. A presentation based on liquidity should only be used where it provides more relevant and reliable information, in which case all assets and liabilities must be presented broadly in the order of liquidity. You see, what I have mentioned earlier is now coming up. That is in the order of liquidity. In the order of liquidity. That is very important. You have to present them in the order of liquidity. Okay? Right. Then, in either case, the entity should disclose any portion of an asset or liability which is expected to be recovered or settled after more than 12 months. Now, this is where it is important. So, let me take the board now, and the rest of the slides I think you can read through, but I just want to explain it on the board for certain things. Okay, just let us go through this quickly. You can read through. This is the definition. Okay. Before coming into the operating cycle, right? Okay. But remaining is the operating cycle. Before coming into the operating cycle, let me explain on the board what this. So when you look at a financial statement of a company, you have assets, you have liabilities. Okay. Now, for a bank, as I told you, in the order of liquidity only you show it. So we don't have to worry about it, and it will be presented in such a manner where in the order of liquidity, that is in the order of reducing liquidity, you display your assets as well as your liability. There is no specific order. But when you go to Haley's, Haley's also has a certain liquidity order, but in addition to that, they have a classification. This classification is called non-current assets and current assets. Non-current liabilities and current liabilities. Okay. So this classification is given there. This classification is given there, which is also very important for a reader to know what your current liabilities and non-current liabilities and what your current assets and non-current assets. Now, how do we segregate these two? Let's say you are a company reporting as at 31st December. Okay. And let's assume that you are reporting as of 2019. Okay. Now, what goes into non-current asset and non-current liabilities, and what goes into current assets and current liabilities? Now, the understanding is very important. Now, you take this particular date. From this date only, you have to look at these four elements. Okay. So, which means any instrument, any item that you are trying to show in the face of the balance sheet, on the face of the balance sheet, the elements within that item should have a maturity of less than 1 year. We call it as the maturity. So anything that is supposed to get matured within 1 year from this date, then it comes a current asset or a current liability. Say for example, now you have cash. Now this cash is something where it doesn't have a maturity, but that is immediately in your hand. So you don't have to wait another more than 1 year to get that cash. No, it's immediately available. Then you will also have debtors. Now who are debtors? You have done some credit sales. So the money that is supposed to be receivable from the debtor is called debtors receivable or receivable. Now you don't give debtors a credit period which is more than 12 months. No. It will be 3 months, 6 months or 45 days, whatever it is. So actually, if you look at it, as at 31st December, this can't go beyond 12 months. So which means anything that is less than 31/12/2020 comes here. Okay. Obviously, beyond 1 year will come. Beyond 1 year will come. So this is the broad classification for current assets, non-current assets, current liabilities and non-current liabilities. So in examination, most of the time, since you are given a financial statement of a bank, you don't have to worry about this because you will go in the order of liquidity. So this doesn't play a big role when it comes to a financial statement of a bank, because banks have to give, which is called a maturity analysis, separately by way of a note. So it is not reflected in their financial statement on the face of the financial statement, but they have to give it separately by way of a note. But for all other companies, this has to get reflected on the face of the financial statement, which is the balance sheet, statement of financial position. So in a statement of financial position, it's called SOFP. This is a must. This is a must. So now the example that I have taken is 31st December 2019. But if you go to 20, then this will be 21, this will be 21. Likewise, you have to look at what is receivable or payable. You can put it that way also. Okay. Now, greater than 1 year means what is receivable here comes under this. Whatever that is payable comes here. Let's say, look at a liability. Now you have a telephone bill payable. So where do we put it? Is it here or here? Obviously, it comes here. It's a current liability because the telephone bill have to be paid within the next month or maybe second month. You can't wait for another year to pay the telephone bill because then it will get disconnected. The telecom provider will not be waiting for that long for you to provide the service. They will immediately disconnect. So as a result, we have an immediate liability there. let's take you have a loan to be repaid after 3 years. Then obviously that loan amount will come. This is the distinction between current, non-current assets as well as current, non-current liabilities. So I want you to take down this. Just take 2 minutes and quickly take down this. Okay. Then the last section that we need to do in this is the operating cycle. So operating cycle is basically in terms of a business concern, how long do you take to recover your cash from your credit sale? That is what it means, right? So let's take a timeline. Okay. So here you purchase your raw material. Okay. And you produce it and you have the finished goods. Now these finished goods, let's assume it takes it takes 23 days for you to sell this stock. Okay, until such time it is a stock for you. You have manufactured and it is in your showroom, and to sell this it takes 23 days. So you have the sale here. Now when you sell this, you have created a debtor. There is a debtor because this is a credit sale. There is a debtor created. And to this debtor you give, let's say, a credit period of 60 days. 60 days. So basically this is 60 days. Right? Then I am also extending this. This is where you purchase your raw materials. Raw materials, and it is again on credit terms. Okay, let's say you take a credit term of 45 days. So you can pay for this within 45 days. And for that, let's assume you pay it on the 40th day. So you have taken 40 days to pay. 40 days to pay. And similarly, for you to recover from your customer, you have taken 45 days, right? So cash is received. Cash is received. Okay. So for you to receive cash, you take 45 days, even though you have given credit period of 60 days. Now, what does it mean? We are talking about the operating cycle. Now, operating cycle means from the point of purchasing the raw material up to the point of recovering this money from the debtor, there are time periods. Now, effectively, how quickly this money turnaround is happening or the cash turnaround is happening, that is what the objective is. So what do we do here is, we have to do, actually have to do a calculation for different ratios, which we'll do under financial ratios. You have to calculate the stock turnover ratio, debtors turnover ratio, and creditors turnover ratio. So that is what I have given in simple terms in number of days. So what you need to do is, you would add the 23, that is the stock turnover days, and the debtors turnover days is 45, minus for the payment, you have taken 40 days. So effectively, you are taking 28 days to turn around the raw material that you have purchased into cash. You see, this is how quickly you convert your raw material into cash. So what needs to happen? You have purchased the raw material, then it has to become manufactured and it becomes finished product. Then this finished product will go into the showroom and it will be there, say, for 23 days. By the time you take the sale, then for the sale, you do a credit sale, it gives you 60 days, but fortunately you collect the money within 45 days. So this long cycle, effectively for the company, how quickly you recover cash from the raw material. So I have drawn this diagram for understanding, but the basic understanding is how quickly you sell your stock, how quickly you recover your money from your debtor, how quickly or delayed you pay the creditor for your purchases. So effectively, your operating cycle will be the 23 days of stock turnover, 45 days of debtors turnover, and 40 days of creditors turnover. So I would like you to take down this diagram. Okay. So the operating cycle of an entity is the time between the acquisition of the assets for processing and their realization in cash equivalent. This is the definition, theoretical definition. That is what I have explained you in diagram. Current assets therefore include inventories, that is stocks and trade receivables, which is the debtors that are sold, consumed and realized as part of the normal operating cycle. This is the case even when they are not expected to be realized within the 12 months. So it is very unlikely that you give somebody a credit period of more than 12 months, which is unrealistic. So we have to be mindful that the stocks as well as the trade receivable or the debtors will come under current assets, and the creditors or the payables will come under current liabilities. This is continuing on the definitions which you have to go through and remember. Not going in detail. Then again we come back to the statement of comprehensive income, which talks about what we have to present in terms of the financial statement. Okay, right. So that brings us to the end of LKS 1. Do you have any questions? If you have any questions, please let me know before we go into the next topic. Okay, So I'll leave it with you all for you all to go through, and if there is any questions, as I told you, can always send an email. So let's now look at a new topic, because we are running behind the time. So let's quickly look at some new topics, which is again 3 more standards that we are going to look at. Okay. Right. So we are going to look at LKS 21, which talks about the effects of changes in foreign exchange rates. So, you know, for every business, the impact of the exchange rate, that is the dollar rate, rupee dollar rate, is an important factor. And all the other currencies are also same, but we look at it in terms of the movement of dollar rupee, where it will get converted into the various other rates, which is known as the cross rate. Okay, so basically exchange rates play an important role, and how the effect of these changes in exchange rates impacts the business. That is what we are going to look at, which talks about under LKS 21. So the standard shall be applied in accounting for transactions and balances in foreign currencies, except those derivative transactions and balances. So we are not focusing on derivatives, which is the transactions which involve forward contracts, swaps, all those items. We are not going to look into that. What we are looking at here is, because for forward contract swaps, those interest rate swaps, for those there are separate standards. So here we are focusing on all the other instruments where there will be an impact of the exchange rate. In translating the results and financial position of foreign operations that are included in the financial statement of the entity by consolidation, proportionate consolidation, or the equity method. So now, before going into this, you need to understand, now if you look at a bank has so much of foreign currency deposits. You have NRFC, RFC, so many types of foreign currency deposits are there. Similarly, you will have the foreign currency loans as well. There will be importers, exporters who will be requiring foreign currency loans in terms of foreign currency. But ultimately, when you look at the financial statements, you saw the financial statements were prepared based on rupees. You saw that. So there is a situation where you have certain assets and liabilities in your books in foreign currencies, but when it comes to the presentation of financial statement, you have to show everything in rupees. Now, if it is a company incorporated in Sri Lanka, they will normally present it in rupees. So as a result, all these foreign currency balances have to be now converted into rupees. Okay, converted into rupees. Now that process, we call it as translation. So you convert a foreign currency amount, which is, it could be an asset or a liability, into the presentation currency, which is in. Now during this process, you come across another important element that is known as the revaluation gain or loss. Revaluation gain or loss. That is what it means. So in translating an entity's result and financial position into presentation currency, what will happen? There will be an impact to the business. And we have to look at two definitions. These 5 definitions are very important. Functional currency, presentation currency, foreign currency, closing rate, and spot exchange rate. Okay. So what are these? Functional currency is the currency of the primary economic environment in which the entity operates. Now, if you look at Sri Lanka, what is the functional currency of Sri Lanka? It is basically Sri Lankan rupees. But there may be companies or maybe there can be operations which are where the functional currency may not be rupees. It could be in dollars. Now, let me give you an example. Most of the banks that we have in Sri Lanka have two kinds of operations within them. One, they call it as domestic operations. Domestic operations mean domestic banking unit means where they deal mostly in rupees. So their functional currency is rupees. But in order to serve their BOI companies, then there could be foreign companies which are obtaining facilities, services. For catering for those purposes, their operating currency will be slightly different. Now, every bank will have their own foreign currency business unit. We call it as FCBU. You also must be knowing in your respective banks, there is a separate unit which called foreign currency business unit or your offshore banking center. Now, their functional currency is dollars. Their functional currency is dollars. So they are operating mostly in dollars. They don't use rupees. Okay. But when it comes to presentation, both these units, that is the domestic unit as well as the foreign currency business unit, they have to present it in rupees. So what happens? The foreign currency business unit also needs to convert all their foreign currency balances sorry, into rupees. Okay. So the functional currency and the presentation currency, the difference have to be clearly understood, where there is a clear distinction where you need to know what is functional currency and what is presentation currency. Now, in the two financial statements I showed you, namely the Haley's and the Commercial Bank, and there you saw it was in rupees 1,000. Now, what is that? That is the presentation currency. Presentation currency. Okay. Then what is a foreign currency? Foreign currency is a currency other than the functional currency of an entity. So basically, if your functional currency is rupees, then all the other currencies are foreign currencies for you. Similarly, if your functional currency is dollars, then all the other currencies become foreign currencies to you. Okay, that is very important. Then, as you know, every day there is this dollar rupee rate. How much is $1? How much is 1 GBP? So likewise you have. So what do you mean by closing rate? Closing rate is the spot exchange rate at the reporting date. Please underline spot exchange rate at the reporting date. Now say for example, if your reporting date is 31st December, on that day you have to determine what is the dollar rupee rate. That is, how much is $1? How much is 1 GBP? How much is 1 euro? Likewise, you have to determine. That is called the closing rate. Spot exchange rate is the exchange rate for immediate delivery. Now say if there is a transaction happening today, that transaction will happen at the spot exchange rate. Now if you want to go and buy foreign currencies, you want to go abroad and you want say $500 or $5,000. But what you have in hand is rupees. So what you do, you go to the bank and you give these rupees that you have and you request for dollars from the bank. So the bank will use a spot exchange rate for this transaction, which is known as the TT selling rate. TT selling rate, because banks will sell high and buy low. When they want to sell foreign currency, they will sell it at a higher rate. But when they buy foreign currency, they buy it at a lower rate. That's why when you want to go and get dollars from a bank by giving rupees, the rate that they will quote will be higher. But similarly, when you have dollars and you want to make it into rupees, when you go and ask for it, they will give you a different rate. So spot exchange rate is whatever that is considered for the transaction. Closing rate is the rate which you use to translate all your foreign currencies into the presentation currency. So please remember these definitions, because it might be tested for you to write a short note or maybe in the form of an MCQ. Right. Then we also have foreign operation, net investment, and monetary items. Now, foreign operation is a subsidiary, associate, joint venture, likewise. Now, say for example, you have a company here, and similarly, you have another company in US, okay, which is your part of your operation. So the company that you have in US is called a foreign operation, and it becomes a subsidiary of your company, obviously. Okay. Then what you call by net investment in a foreign operation is the amount of the reporting entity's interest in the net assets of that operation. Now, say for example, you have invested $100 in a company which is operating in US. But if you take the net worth of that company today, if it is $150, if you sell all the assets of the company, you will get $150. So, but what you have invested is only $100. So what is the net investment? It will be $50. $50. Okay. Then you have monetary items. Monetary items are currency held and assets and liabilities to be received or paid in fixed or determinate number of units of currency. So monetary items, of course, is whether it is for foreign currency or local currency, it is applicable. So for all your assets and liabilities, what you are supposed to do end of the day is either to pay or receive. So what you are doing is actually either you are paying or receiving a certain number of units of currency. If you pay $5,000 for a particular product, then you are paying 5,000 units of that currency. Okay. So that is what is known as monetary items. Recognition of exchange differences. So this I will explain on the board. Presentation currency I have already explained it to you. Right. So let me go to the board and explain you how to recognize these elements in the financial statement. Right. Okay. Now let's look at this. Say, for simplicity, I take a liability. Okay. Now there is a customer. And he comes and gives you, let's say, 1,000 USD. $1,000 as a deposit. And let's say for simplicity, this is on 2nd of December. Let's see. Yeah, 2nd of December 2020. And on this date, the dollar rate was, let's say, 185. 185. So $1. One USD will be equivalent to 185 rupees. So you know now this customer has given you $1,000. But for you to put it in the financial statement, what you have to do, you have to use exchange rate, which is called the spot exchange rate. Now this is what the transaction is going to happen. So you will have 185 85,000. This we call it as presentation. You see? And this will be in. So what I have done is the $1,000 I got from the customer as a deposit is now shown as 185,000. So on this particular date, 2nd of December, if you ask, I'm just looking at this particular deposit, how much is your deposit? 185,000. But in terms of foreign currency, you will say 1,000. Now let's say, okay, we go to 31st December, and still the deposit is 1,000 USD. And now the dollar rate is not 185. Dollar is not 185. It has gone to, let's say, 190. 190. Now your financial year ends on 31st December. Okay, your financial year ends on 31st December. So now this becomes your spot exchange rate. Right? Now this 190 becomes your financial year reporting dates rate. As a result, now this is called the closing rate. You see? This is also the spot exchange rate, but the problem is now your financial reporting happens also in this date. So whenever you are doing a financial reporting, the rate which is applicable on that particular date is called the closing rate. So now your deposits value is not 185, it is 190. 190. 190. But in between, now you see, if I have 1,000 rupees, then it becomes 2,000 rupees means I have to put another 1,000. But here the customer has not done anything. 1,000 USD, again 1,000 USD. He has not put in money or he has not taken out money also. So as a result, now the only change that happened was the rate. As a result of the rate, the amount that you are going to present has got changed. Sorry, has got changed. Has got changed by how much? Rupees 5,000. Rupees 5,000. Okay. Now let's look at the diagram. This is your deposits. So you have a liability. You have started with 185,000 liability. That is on 2nd December. Now when it comes to the 31st December, you say your liabilities are not 185, but it is 190. So 31st December, your liabilities carried forward 190, brought forward 190. So as a result, your total is 190. You also 190. Now you will see, when you say 190, it doesn't balance. So you need to bring in a number here. And that is this 5,000. So you have credited here 5,000. So according to the double entry principle, you have to debit somewhere. So that somewhere is called the P&L, where you will have exchange gain stroke loss. Exchange gain stroke loss. So you will debit your P&L account for 5,000 and credit the deposits by 5,000. This is what called as revaluation gain or loss. Revaluation gain or loss. What you are doing here is the translation. In doing the translation in between, not actually the translation, it is actually becomes a revaluation because this is an existing deposit. Now you are trying to revalue it by this rate. So as a result of this revaluation, now you have a revaluation loss of, this is a loss, this is a debit, $5,000. You see? So I want you to take down this. This is how the revaluation gain or loss works. And this amount of 5,000 will appear in your financial statement, in the statement of comprehensive income, as exchange loss. And thereafter, I want you to calculate, let's say, on 30th June 2020, this rate becomes 180. 180. How much is the exchange profit or loss? Exchange profit or loss. Can you calculate? Assume there is no change to the deposit. It is $1,000. Still, it is $1,000. There is no change. So, if that is the case, what is the exchange gain or loss as at 30th June 2020? Quickly calculate. How much is it? So now, if it is still $1,000, then it becomes 180,000. Okay, 180,000. So here, right, now let us look at it. So now your brought forward balance is 190 because of the last date. Your brought forward balance is 190. But now you say as at 30th June, your balance is 180. So 30th June, your balance is 180. So your grand total becomes 190 again. But this side is 190, this side is not 190, it is only 190. So what you need to do, you need to bring in a balancing figure. How much is that? 10,000. Now the question here is, you are debiting here and you will go and credit to P&L. Now this becomes a profit. This becomes a profit. So there is a clear indication that when the exchange rate goes down, now initially it was 185, then it went up, then it came down. When the exchange rate goes up, if it's a liability, then you will have revaluation losses. Okay? But the same transaction, when the exchange rate comes down, when you do a revaluation, you will have an exchange profit. Exchange profit. This is the clear difference between the two types of movement in exchange rates. The changes in exchange rates can cause. One is where you will have the exchange profit. The other one is where you will have an exchange loss. Okay. Similarly, if it is an asset, it works the other way around. When the exchange rate goes up, you will have exchange profit, and when the exchange rate goes down, you will have exchange losses. Okay. So please make a note. The foreign currency assets and liabilities. The foreign currency assets and liabilities the foreign currency assets and liabilities will be converted to the presentation currency by using the exchange rate with within brackets you can say closing rate. Applicable as at the reporting date. Next line. Depending on the movement, depending on the movement. Depending on the movement of the exchange rate, the company will realize revaluation gains or losses as shown below. Okay, so this is how it works. I have shown it on the board. If there are foreign currency assets, when the closing rate goes up, you will have an exchange profit. Similarly, when the rate goes down, you will have an exchange loss. When the foreign currency liabilities, when the rate goes up, you will have an exchange loss, and when the rate goes down, you will have an exchange profit. So please take down this. It will be easy for your reference to remember. Okay, and make a note there. The above mentioned exchange profit or loss. The above mentioned exchange profit or loss will be reported as a gain or loss. Gain or loss in the statement of comprehensive income. You can say SOCI. So now we look at a different scenario now. This is translation of a foreign operation. Okay. So you are a parent company in Sri Lanka. So you are basically your reporting currency is Sri Lankan rupees, LKR. And you also have a subsidiary okay, and let's say this is in let's say you are in London. Okay. But their functional currency is USD. Or maybe say you say GBP. Okay. GBP. Great Britain pounds. Now, when it comes to presentation, now you have to prepare the financial statements of the group. So what you need to do, you need to bring in the parent, plus you need to bring in the subsidiary. But the problem is both have to be in LKR. Both have to be in LKR. So as a result, now what happens? You need to convert this GBP into LKR. That is what we call as translation. Okay. When you do this translation, similar to what we looked at the revaluation, here also you will have translation gains stroke losses. You see? Because there will be movements in the GBP rupee rate. GBP LKR rate will vary. So as a result, when you do this translation, the GBP into LKR, you will have a translation gain or loss. Okay. Now in the case of revaluation gain or loss, you know the gain or loss went into the P&L. But here, this translation gain or loss will go into the equity. And that will be known as the foreign currency translation reserve. Foreign currency translation reserve. And it will be routed through the other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income. In your statement of comprehensive income. Okay, so it will go to the equity through OCI. This you have to remember. But there had been once I think there was a question. So you have to remember that how you take this translation gain or loss resulting from the translation of a foreign operation into the statement of comprehensive. Okay. So quickly take down. So I can show you the same thing. If you look at the financial statements I gave you, in the commercial bank's financial statement, as I told you, under statement of comprehensive income, you will see there is one line item here. You can view that. Net gains, losses arising from translating the financial statement of foreign operations. You see? So this is what I have been referring. In the statement of comprehensive income, it will have this item. And similarly, as I told you, it goes into the equity. And in the equity statement, there is one item. This is the statement of changes in equity. You see, and in this you will know, you can find out. You see this column, foreign currency translation reserve, foreign currency translation reserve. Okay, so revaluation goes into the P&L and foreign currency translation reserve comes into the equity. Those are the two main items. Okay. Right. So now we go back to the topic again. So that is all about foreign currency thing. Then we also go into the LKS 8, which is on accounting policies, changes in accounting estimates and errors, right? This is not a big topic, so we can just go through quickly because what we need is very minimal information for the examination. So there is a specific standard which covers your accounting policies. As I told you, whatever the financial statements that you are preparing, it has to go through a certain process. So it has to have its own policies, accounting estimates, like for the depreciation and all, you will have the depreciation rates, then the useful life, those type of information, all will go into the accounting policies. All will go into the accounting policy. So it is very important that you need to have the accounting policies in fact. Okay, and these accounting policies, when there is a change to your accounting policy, it has to be applied to the financial statements in two ways. One is there will be accounting policies which will have an impact, and the change of which you will do it going forward. Okay, you will do it going forward. But there will be changes to your accounting estimates, like the depreciation rates. Now, initially you would have thought the depreciation rate for computers will be 5 years. But over the period of time, with experience, you will see that this 5-year period is not sufficient. 5-year period is too much and you will have to bring it down. So you make it 3 years. Now the change of 3 years will have to be applied, which we call it as retrospectively. That is, you have to go back to the period where you have purchased it and change it from that day onwards. But there will be certain changes that you do based on the accounting policies. Those will be done prospectively, that is going forward. You don't have to go back and adjust your prior periods. Okay, that is what that it means. Then we come to the last topic that is on inventories, that is talking about stocks of a company. Okay, so when you have stocks, how do we account for those stocks in my books? Okay, so basically the standard applies to all inventories except, like in the case of LKS 16 where we said this standard applies to these apart from certain exclusions. So here also the standard applies to all inventories except work in progress arising under construction contracts. So I told you, when there is a condominium property ongoing, that will not be covered under inventories, that will be under construction contracts. Similarly, there will be financial instruments, which is a topic that we are about to learn based on SLFRS 9. So that also will not apply under LKS 2. Then also we have biological assets related to agricultural activity, which is something like the tea plants, tea plantations. Those also will not be under inventories, LKS 2. The standard does not apply to the measurement of inventories held by producers of agricultural and forest products, commodity brokers and dealers who measure their inventories at the fair value less cost involving in sale. So these are the exceptions. So in simple terms, what is inventory? We need to know that. Inventories are assets held for sale in the ordinary course of business. That is, you have manufactured t-shirts. Now, when you go and put these t-shirts into the showroom means that is your stock. Now, Damro manufactures furnitures. When they go and put it in their showroom means that is their stock. So that is what we are talking about, stock or inventory, whatever you may call it. But these stocks can have different forms. That is what is given here. The stocks could be finished products. That is what you display in the showrooms as finished products. Or there could be products which are work in progress. Now, say for example, you are in the process of manufacturing a table. So where you would have done the tabletop, but not the 4 legs. But those are also part of your stocks. But those stocks are given a special name, which is called as work in progress. And the third type of stocks will be the stocks that you have brought in the form of raw materials to manufacture the product. Now, in order to manufacture the table, you would have brought in wood. That wood would be your raw material stock. If you are an apparel company, you would have purchased raw material of clothes, or maybe the wools, or those, so many items will be there. So those apparels will be the raw materials stock for your manufacturing. Then the end product will be the t-shirt. End product will be the t-shirt. But before that, you would have purchased a raw material. So the stocks can take 3 forms, or the inventories can take 3 forms. One is the finished good. Second one is the work in progress. And the third is the raw material. So inventories can take 3 forms: trading stocks, work in progress, and raw materials. And here we have 2 definitions, important definitions. One is called the fair value. And fair value, you have already know what the definition for fair value is. But here we bring in a new item called net realizable value. Now the net realizable value is known as the estimated selling price in the ordinary course of the business, less the estimated cost of completion and the estimated cost of necessary to make the sale. So what does it mean? Now say if you have trading stocks, and for these trading stocks you have estimated a price, at which price you will sell it. That price is known as the net realizable value. Net realizable. Similarly, when you have work in progress, that work in progress also will have a certain value. That is called net realizable value. And similarly, when you have raw materials, you have purchased these raw material at a certain price. That is your net realizable value. Okay. So net realizable value can change depending on the type of the stock that you are having. It could be trading stock, it could be work in progress, or it could be the raw materials. Okay. So how you measure it? You can apply the cost or net realizable value, whichever is lower. Okay. Now say you have a trading stock. For the trading stock, you have the cost to be 100,000 and the net realizable value to be 85,000. Then your stock value should be the lower of the two, which means it is 85,000. So this LKS2 talks about stock valuation techniques. That is what we are going to look out next. So stock valuation techniques, there are so many techniques that are available. But the most important techniques of stock valuation is the first in, first out and the weighted average cost method. Okay, there is an example which is given there. So I'm not going to do that now, but I will explain you how this cost formula for the two types of first in and first out basis will apply. Okay, so let's look at the board. So let's take simply 3 transactions. Okay. Okay, I'm taking 4 days for you to explain. Okay, so I have taken 3 transactions. This is 1, 2, 3, and this is the stock valuation. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'll change the dates slightly. Okay. So on 5th of August, you are doing a purchase for 100 units at 80 rupees each. Then on 10th of August, again you are doing another purchase, 100 unit at 90 rupees each. On 15th August, you do a 50 units sale, but that is at 120 units each. So this is basically your selling price, which is not your selling price. Now the question is, what is the value of the remaining stock as at 31st August? So if you look at the stocks, okay, don't take down. Okay. Here you have 100 units. Here you have another 100 units which has come in. Here you have 50 units which has gone out. I'm showing it as negative. Okay. Now, what is the unit price? Now here you know this was purchased at 80 rupees. And here you know, so before going into this, here you know purchase the, okay, and your remaining stock is basically 150. Now the question here is, before you do a valuation, there is a problem here. The problem is, with this you have done a sale. So for the valuation, we have two techniques. One is called the FIFO. The other one is the weighted average cost. Weighted average cost. So the problem here is, before we value the stocks, closing stocks, we need to identify the sale or the move stocks that have moved out the 50 units, at which rate this will move out. At which rate this will move out. The problem here is, the 50 units can go out in two ways. One is known as the FIFO, the other one is known as the weighted average cost method. FIFO means we call it as first in, first out. First in, first out. So the first set of units which came into the business has to go out first. Okay. Now the problem is, by this time, 15th of August, you see, 5th of August you have done a purchase, 10th of August you have done a purchase, but 15th August only you are selling it. So by this time, you have two sets of purchases at different prices, and my problem is now, at which price I should remove this. This is the selling price, that has no relevance here. Now for the stock valuation, I have to see at which price I need to remove this stock. Whether it is at 80, whether it is at 90 or some other price. So basically, if you are applying FIFO, you know what came in first has to go out first. So which means, so what I will do is, if I am using FIFO, I will use 80. Okay, that is one side of the story. If I am going to use WACC, weighted average cost method, then what should I do is, before removing this stock, I need to do a weighted average cost. Weighted average cost. What do you mean by this weighted average cost? Weighted average cost is basically 100 into 80, which is 8,000. 100 into 90, which is 9,000. I add the two, 17,000, and divide it by 200. So basically what will happen? I will get 85 rupees. 85. So if I am to use the weighted average cost method, what I will have to do is, I have to maintain an average cost of all my remaining stock before doing the sale. So if I use the WACC then I will use 85 for this purpose. 85 for this purpose. Okay. So if I am using this, my closing stock value will be 100 into 80 is 8,000. 50 into 80. If I use 54, then 50 into 80 means 4,000. If it is 54. If it is weighted average cost, then it will be 0, 4,250. If it is WACC, then here it is. Then my closing stock value will have two forms. 8 and 9, 17,000. 17,000 minus 4 is 13,000. If it is 54. If it is WACC, then 8 plus 9 is 17,000. 17,000 minus 4,250 means it is 12,007. You see? So depending on the cost method that you are going to apply, FIFO or weighted average cost, or there are maybe some other cost methods also, your closing stock value will vary. This is your closing stock value. So these two are basically known as the cost valuation methods. Cost valuation methods. Cost valuation. Okay. So you can take down this, but parallelly, if I am to ask you a question, suppose you might have heard this term also. If I am going to use LIFO, so by hearing the term, you might know what it is I am asking about. LIFO. What would be the value? What would be the value that you might use here? Board, of course, I think you might need to check your device. I'm not sure with that. Suppose if you are using LIFO means, what does it mean? Maybe you can check later with when the video is uploaded. Just you might have to zoom it and see. So if you are using LIFO, what does it mean? You have to put out what was taken last as the first to be put out. So first in first out means FIFO. Last in first out means LIFO. So which means you have done a purchase on 5th, you have done a purchase on 10th. So if you are to put out 50 units, you have to take the last one and put it out first. So the last one is this, and you will take 50 units from this 100 and put it out first. And that will have the price of 90. One of you have already answered, I think very correct. You will have to use 90. So basically LIFO is not a common practice. The FIFO and the WACC is the normal general tendency, but you can also use LIFO also. Okay, so you can take down this, or you can later on view this on the video. But what I want to mention is, maybe in the last 2 examinations there had been questions on this stock valuation. So better for you to go through this. And I have given you a question at the final slide, and you can give it a try to do that. Okay, and also there are past paper questions. If you want, you can try those also, which is on the stock valuation. Okay, so basically those are the things which we need to cover before we go into the bigger topic, which is on the financial instruments. So I'm looking at starting the financial instruments next week. So preferably you have to do all your revision work and be ready and look at the financial statements, specifically what we have already uploaded to the two commercial bank and the Haley's, because the financial terms that I'm going to use during financial instruments topic will come there. So have an idea about the topics that are given there. Okay. So with that, we will wind up for today. Hope you have a pleasant weekend and see you next week.